The Morning Contributors joins us now with more on who is most impacted and why. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year to
Alex.
you.
Happy New Year. We are here.
It's a happy time, but we're obviously talking about something that is it is top of mind for everyone right now. Yes. Loneliness and isolation. They're related, but not the same thing. So what exactly is the difference?
Such a good distinction to make, Alex. So loneliness is actually the painful feeling of being alone. You may actually be in a room of people or have a big family or be working on a team, but you're not connected with them. You're feeling disconnected, you're feeling misunderstood, you're feeling as if you're standing on the side. As opposed to people who are isolated, they actually are physically separated. They don't have a lot of social interactions. And here's the interesting thing. People who are isolated without social interactions may not actually feel lonely.
Interesting.
And people who are lonely may be surrounded by a lot of people. So we have to really make that distinction.
Yeah, that's really important. So everyone, as you mentioned, can feel lonely at some point or another. It's just a matter of how long that lasts, I'm assuming, right? Who is more affected health-wise when it comes to loneliness?
So when we look at the demographics, we see the elderly population. By elderly, we mean over 65. But interestingly, it's the younger demographic, 18 to 22 years old, coming out of this pandemic, who are the most susceptible. The more engaged with social media, the less engaged with in-person activities. And we're finding that that demographic is the most at risk, not only for loneliness and isolation, but for depression and anxiety as well.
Now, when you talk about teens being affected by this, you think about the pandemic and how that lasted for a couple of years. Those are really key years for them and for their socialization. How can somebody come out of that when those years felt like they were kind of taken away?
That's right, and those are critical years. And in fact, the U.S. Preventive Task Force, the USPTF, is now recommending that doctors screen patients for depression, and specifically not only adults, but pregnant women, postpartum women, and teenagers. And not only that, we may be moving into an era where we begin to prescribe as doctors social interaction. So not only are we now being asked to screen for it, we need to be able to refer people to community resources to get help.
Wow. Okay. So what are some of the things that doctors then look for, some symptoms? Because, you know, if you feel lonely, you know, is it a matter of how many days out of 30 days you feel this feeling, or how does that work?
So we're beginning to ask specific questions about your social interaction and your level of satisfaction with your social interaction. Remember, loneliness is a subjective feeling. You may actually be surrounded by people. You may be laughing but not feeling that laughter inside, trying to connect but feeling disconnected. So it's a matter of what is your perception of what's happening in your life, and then referring people to the resources that they need.
So can you connect then loneliness and heart issues, like I mentioned at the top of this segment? Where do those two connect?
So those two connect because when we look at the latest data, people who are suffering from loneliness and isolation, loneliness primarily, have an increased risk of heart attacks and death by 29% and 32% increased risk of stroke. And not only that, you also have an increased risk of heart attack and stroke, but also type 2 diabetes, anxiety, depression, and increased risk of addiction, suicidal ideation, cigarette smoking. So all of this goes along with it. So it's really best to stem the tide. We really want to start to look at prevention. And you're absolutely right. Our teenagers lost critical, formative, socializing years, and we are yet to really see what the cost of that will be.
We shall see. And that's not even scratching the surface of our younger kids that miss out on preschool and the early elementary school years. Really, really tough for a lot of people. Dr. Morgan, as always, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll be right back.